Happy Sunday. Hope everyone's having a great weekend. Welcome to Mike's Laboratory. Today is a random ramble day. There's a few things I'd like to talk about that occurred to me over the past couple of weeks. And I want to show you a little bit about some of the differences in flocked and painted heads, and a little bit about flocking and how it turns out in general. I've touched on some of it before. The first couple things I haven't. So without any ado, almost forgot. Disclaimer. These opinions are my own. You may like them, you may not. I don't intend to pull any punches about what I think as usual. And please tell me if you disagree or agree, or if I'm full of it, or if I'm not, in the comments. And as always, thanks very much for watching, and thanks very much for subscribing. Spread the word. Resistance is futile. Join me. Okay, anyhow. First thing I like to talk about is like client-fixer relations. In my little flocking and fixing stuff here, I ran into something new that I hadn't run across before, and I must say I'm a little disappointed. It made me a little bit angry, and I don't really understand why it occurred. Okay, if I fix something for someone or for you, if there's a problem with it, I stand behind my work. Okay, if something's wrong, if something ain't working right, let me know right away. I'll take care of you. Okay, sometimes things happen. Fix a talker, mailman drops it, might break something else in there. Anyway, I had a situation where I had fixed up some stuff for a gentleman and sent it back to him. He paid me. Everything seemed to be happy. About a month later, he shot me a message telling me that there was a problem. And what I asked him right away was, okay, show me the problem, please. And I immediately volunteered to take the stuff back and pay for the shipping to get it back to me, and also obviously to send it back to him, and I would take care of whatever the issue was. Well, he stated to me that he was doing other things at the moment and didn't really have time to do any of that. Like, well, okay, when you have time, let me know. I didn't hear from him for a couple weeks, so I reached out to him again and said, hey, are you going to do this? You know, I want to take care of the problem if you're having a problem. And again, I was told that, yeah, when I got time, basically. Those aren't exact words. I'm being as obtuse as I can because I don't want to call anybody out. That's between me and my client. But this is something that I think needs to be mentioned. The only thing that I can assume if somebody acts like that after telling me there's a problem is that it's not that important to me if they can't even take the time to show me a picture of what's wrong or whatever the case may be. Or you're trying to pull some kind of scam, get your money back, or get half your money back, whatever. Those are the only two things that I can really logically and reasonably assume from an interaction like that. So please don't do that. And I'm pretty sure that anybody else who does this stuff will tell you the same thing. If there's an issue, let me know right away. Show me the problem and get that sucker back in the mail to me so I can take care of you. Again, I stand behind the work. All right? Okay, enough said on that. The next thing I'd like to mention is something that really cracks me up a little bit, but it's not really very funny. Most of us who collect this stuff are guys, but there are some girls out there who do. Some of them are in groups, and it's the same old thing. But anyhow, this is, I'm going to be speaking of this as a guy dealing with a woman. Okay, I've seen a lot in the groups lately. Guys will offer stuff up for sale, and they'll say, "Oh, my wife says I need to get rid of some of this stuff." Really? Seriously? Guys, again, this is just my own opinion, but as far as I'm concerned, you got a right to collect whatever the hell you want and have it in your own home. And I don't think that anybody has the right to tell you what you can and cannot collect or how much of it you can have. Now, obviously, there's some exceptions to this. I mean, if you're hoarding this stuff to the point where it's a fire hazard, Okay, I mean, that's obviously a different problem, but yeah, okay, that's not acceptable, obviously. Or if you're not paying the bills, spending the kids' college funds, you know, and spending it on G.I. Joe stuff, okay, again, that's another situation where it's not acceptable, but that's, another problem up here like hoarding that you need to deal with if you're doing that. But aside from those extremes, guys, it's your stuff. Nobody has the right to tell you to get rid of your stuff. So, I mean, and then if your wife don't like it, quite bluntly, go look in her shoe closet. How many shoes she got in there? My God, the shoes. Okay? That's my take on this kind of thing. I'll tell you another thing, too. I'm not married. I ain't doing that shit again. But I got a very good woman who I live with, who I love very much. And I got a lot of respect for. And, it seems that she does for me, too, or else she still wouldn't be here. But I guarantee you, if she told me that I had to get rid of some of that stuff, that would be like, no, that's not happening. Okay? And if it wasn't insistence on trying to control me to that degree, it would be like, you're out of here. Okay? That's just blunt, straight from the shoulder for me. So anyways, guys, I just felt that had to be mentioned because I just can't understand that. And it's like, why would you let someone do that? Enough said about that, I guess, huh? Okay. So, I want to move on to a little bit about the heads I was talking about. In my flocking, I have seen one hell of a lot of heads. Oh my God, so many. I'd like to point out a couple of things about the flocking. Man, you take a look at this guy here. This is a reflock that I did. Hope the light is good enough that you guys can see it. I got there's accent colors in there, the yellows and the reds. Okay. And this one here is a very nice condition vintage head. And again, I hope the light is good enough that you can see that. Okay. And you can also see when I put them up together that the colors are slightly different. This guy is a little darker. Same goes for these two, these painted heads. This is one I repainted. This is one with a kind of beat up vintage job. I need to repaint him. Anyways, put them up together. And you can see the one I redid is darker than this one. Point being this, there's a wide range of color shades among the fuzz heads in each color and on the painted heads too. You have brown, red heads, and blondes for each one. So that one. And for the painted heads, you have black-haired ones too. But the range of colors in the paints and in the flocks covers everything from, and the Sea Adventure I think is the best example. They start at come in a pale orange all the way up to an almost cherry red and everything in between. Some got a lot of black in them. Some seem to have more red to them. Some seem to have quite a bit of yellow in there as well. Same holds true for Air Adventurers. Sometimes they're very ashy, pale blonde, and sometimes there's quite a bit of yellow in there, making them almost honey colored. Point being is that there's pretty much no exact, perfect vintage replication flock. You can take the head like I do, and I look at the head if there's any hair left on it, and I try to match up as close as I can to what's on there. I wind up having like 3 different shades of each color, and I even mix and match from there in order to try and match up the customer's head, especially if they tell me they want me to get as close as possible. Usually I can do it. Sometimes I can't, but in any event, within those basic ranges, anything is pretty much acceptable to me anyhow. So I guess what I'm trying to say with that is if you're looking for a perfect match on the vintage color, you're probably not going to get it. If I went ahead and mixed up 14 different batches for each color and then tried to match everything perfectly, I'd have to charge $50 a head because it would take so damn long to match it all up perfect. And the same goes for the paint colors. You'd have to be screwing around, mixing paints, and trying to match that color exactly. And that takes time and that costs money. So something to think about when you're trying to decide, what kind of reflocking you want to have done. There are some guys who get it real close. Some guys don't get it close at all, and they just figure close enough is good. But those gentlemen are also usually the ones who don't be doing it for other people. So anyway, something I want to make everybody aware of, if you're not already. Another thing I like to point out about the heads is take a look at this guy. This is a deflocked Land Adventurer head, and as you can see, he's got that glue mark on him all the way around where the beard is, and on the head. This is an extreme example. It's usually not quite that dark, but the point I'm trying to make with that is, if you want something, a head that's a custom head that's only has a mustache, for example, and the head you're sending me was a bearded one, I've tried everything in the world to get rid of this stain. You can fade it out, you can make it small, you can make it less conspicuous, but I've never been able to get rid of it entirely. So the best thing to do if you want something beardless, send me a beardless head. Then I can do anything I want to it, or anything you want to it. Yeah, this is something else to consider and remember. I've had that happen quite a bit lately, where people will send me a bearded head that they don't want a beard on it. So I tell them, it's going to be a glue stain. You're going to see it. It might bug you, it might not. It depends on how picky you are about such things, and of course on how dark the glue stain is. So anyhow, that's what I had to say about that. Hey, a couple more things I'd like to point out about various figures. I have here a box of, these are all Repro and Cot stuff. Alright, Repro bodies. Try to take the hand off of this guy. You notice how the peg is clear? Okay. And now I gotta find it. I should have hung onto it after I took it apart. Oh. You see, this guy, he happens to be African American, but it doesn't matter. He has a white peg. And as you can see, if you look close there, the same color as the vintage pegs are white. This guy is a masterpiece guy, and they seem to have the same types of pegs as the vintage dudes. Some of these other repros, like this one here with the clear pegs, they are damn near impossible to get apart. They also have the issue of, okay, this is a Repro leg. As you can see, it's, hang on a minute. Okay, crack in the knee, crack here, crack on the thigh. Come out of the box that way. They've been in the box for obviously like 18 years or so, but just sitting in the box shouldn't cause this. The plastic that they use on these figures is pretty cheap, and in my opinion, after dealing with them for a while and having people ask me to try to take these things apart to replace body parts like you would with a vintage Joe, I'm afraid I'm just not going to be doing that anymore, because it ain't really worth the time or trouble, and then you risk breaking the customer's piece, and then they get mad at you. So I'm going to say that this is a no-go, and for the rest of time. There's another one. I picked this one up for a guy who lives up in Canada. This was an astronaut in a masterpiece box. I forget which set it was off the top of my head. Or no, it was a timeless collection. I'm sorry. He came out of the box like that. I mean, seriously. And this didn't use a good quality plastic. And that brings me to the next thing I'd like to talk about is, one more thing. Where's that head? Where is that head? I might have mentioned this before. Flocking on these guys was horrible. Look at that. I was able to partially remove the flock here just by rubbing my hands on it. You can see how it's coming away from the paint. This is a Walmart Wally Joe man of action. But every Repro flocked head I've encountered has had basically the same thing. Crap flocking, crappy glue. Water will take this off. All you gotta do is soak it in hot water for a couple minutes. You can wipe it right off with a paper towel. So anyway, However, there is an alternative. I recommend this sort of thing to anybody who has, for example, an African American Joe, vintage Joe that has crumbled away. And I've also, I'll talk about that a little bit in a minute too. And anybody who's got repro bods. The repro heads are pretty decent, actually. Like I said, their gear is decent. And I'll show you one of their heads. I got one up here somewhere too. There it is. Afro-American head. It's a fairly decent copy of the vintage head, but they don't seem to have the problems that the bodies do. Heads seem to be just fine for flocking, repainting, or putting on a vintage body if you want to do that. But that brings me back to where I was going. Cotswold Collectibles to the rescue. I'm going to do a little bit of a shout out on these guys today. And Cots is a great place to shop for Joe stuff. They have all kinds of interesting and unique sets, different types of clothing, fair amount of weapons, headgear, and pretty much anything you'd want to be able to get for your Joe. You can get them from Cotswolds. There's several other places that do a pretty good job too, but Cots is the biggest one that I know of. And they've been doing this for, shit, I can't remember how long they've been in business. I'd have to look at the website. But anyway, I highly recommend them. Good quality stuff. Prices are pretty good usually. They have awesome reproduction wetsuits to replace that crumbled away, disintegrated vintage wetsuit that I've had 3 of them, and I ain't doing that no more either. They also have the best bodies that on the aftermarket I've seen. This here's my mini-me, and this is just a vintage head, flock custom, so it looks like me a bit, on a Cotswold body. You can get these action hands from them for the Cotswold bods. Sometimes they're a little stiff, but they all work pretty good for holding things. I highly recommend these bods. They got decent stringing. They're tough. They can take a good beating. When I go outside and I do photo stories and things like that, or take outdoor pictures, I will generally take a Cotswold figure with a vintage head, just because I don't want to, take the risk with vintage figures sometimes. Anyhow, set on that. Cotswold bodies are great to replace for that too. Get yourself an African American body, pop the vintage head off of your crumbled away African American adventurer, and pop it on the Cots bod, and no worries. As a matter of fact, that the availability of those kinds of those figures has made me not want to buy African American adventure team guys ever again either. I'll talk about that just a little bit more. A friend of mine, Andrew McGrady, in one of the groups, I was asking him about that. He's into Mark's figures as well. He knows quite a bit about them. You got a question about Mark's figures, Johnny West, Mike Hazard, the Best of the West series, the Knights. He knows this stuff pretty well, and he can probably answer any questions that you have. And he told me that the brown Mark's figures, like the Johnny Wests, any of them that have that caramel brown color, they tend to have the same crumble problem as the African American adventure team Joes. And the reason being, he says, is because they used an organic dye in the plastic, which obviously breaks the plastic down over time. Good knowledge to have, but that also means that this problem is pretty much insoluble. It's going to happen sooner or later. I would be pretty sure, I would guess that probably the humidity and temperature conditions and maybe sunlight and things like that have something to do with it as well. But anything organic is going to break down over time. And since this takes the plastic with it, I'm not buying any more of those guys. I've had 3 of them crumble on me. But I did save the heads to do it, like I said before. The other thing I'd mention about it is that if you do have one that's not crumbling, I should admit that I have one. I have a talking African American commander, and I'm praying that that don't happen to him. But if it does, guess what? He gets Cotswold arms, hips, legs, and I swap the torso. But anyway, to avoid that problem, I would be very careful about how you store such figures and how you display them. And I have seen guys, the hip balls are usually the first thing to go. And I have seen guys desperately trying to search down hip balls when that starts happening. And it's like, dude, the rest of the figure is going to go sooner or later. So you might as well, you can throw a pair of hip balls at it if you want, but you're going to replace it piece by piece until you got a whole console figure anyway, right? Unless you're going to go spend money on vintage pieces that are likely going to crumble away again. They're harder to get than the Caucasian pieces, obviously. And, if they're going to do that, I don't think they're worth spending money on. It's sad, but it's true. That's my take on that. Oh, the other thing is, if you don't know if that's going to happen and you have one that's whole and seems to be in good shape, smell him. If it smells like a Crayola, a crayon, then you know the process is happening and he's going to crumble sooner or later. Hey, quick break here. I'll be right back. Okay, I'm back. Next thing I'd like to do here today is show you last Random Ramble, I showed you some of the materials I use in the form of like liquids and glues and paints and things like that. Now I'm going to kick out a little bit about the basic tools that I use for fixing and repairing stuff. This is invaluable. I made this out of a yard sign, one of those rummage sale yard signs, the wires that support them, and bent the little hook in the middle. This is a restringing tool. And how you use it is, you take a torso, and I gotta go grab one. Now when you're restringing a figure, you stick this down through there, and you hook the neck hook that's attached to the leg elastic and pull it up through there and pull it through the neck hole so you can, well, of course it's not going to fit real good through that one, but anyways, you get the idea. And you pull the hook through the neck hole so that you can hook up the neck post in the head. And also you stick it through the body or through the torso the other way through the armholes to hook up the armholes as well. Homemade tool and valuable. Nice big loop, gives me plenty of pull when I need it. I can also hook it over a nail or something if I have to pull down to get the elastic all the way through. Works great, costs next to nothing. Restringing tool. I saw online where somebody had made one of these and they called it a fart. Fabricated restringing tool. Pretty funny, but anyways. That's one thing I use regularly for restringing figures. Also, while doing that, various things like a pair of scissors, small and large, for cutting the elastic. The smaller one I use mainly for trimming a head when I flock it. When you flock the heads, they got all kinds of little longer hairs sticking out all over the place. Sometimes it depends on the brand of flock. Some brands come with lots of them that are a little longer than most. And you just trim them all off. And to trim and straighten out the beard lines and stuff. And the curve in there makes it easier to get around the ears. And it's also obviously good for other things like cutting out round stickers, things like that. That little bevel or curve in the blades really helps. Another invaluable tool. Various sizes of wire cutters for cutting baling wire while fixing, making talker strings, or cutting off the talker needles so that you can, to the right length so you can put them in the tone arms. Also invaluable, these ones here for muscle bodies, getting those rivets out of the elbow joints and the forearms. A very thin pair is the only way I've been able to find to get them out of there, aside from using a hacksaw blade and risking cutting on the plastic a little bit. This works much better. Another invaluable tool, miniature channel locks. I've got a couple of these. I use them for tightening rivets, for grabbing hold of things. Obviously, when I restring, I use these eyelets to go around the thigh bars. These are just what do you call it, electrical ring terminals, size 10 to 12. And you just grab hold of that right there and take another pair of pliers, like so, and pull the plastic part off so that way you can clamp the elastic in there. And of course, these small needle nose pliers that I just showed you, doing that. And I have several other kinds with different blade sizes and stuff like that. These ones are actually a little snap ring pliers. They come in handy for things too. I also have a couple of pairs of these. Like I said, one of them I ground the teeth off flat so I can use it to tighten the Joe's rivets with. Other things that are really invaluable, must-haves for me anyway, awls, a pick set, various types of picks and hooks of various sizes. You can buy these in sets of like 4 to 6 tools, and they come with different shapes on the end, so you can reach down into areas to grab hold of things like elastic down in the leg, or reaching up in there to try and catch the hook if you can't get it out, or the neck hook if you can't get it out. All kinds of things these are very useful for. Must-haves in my workshop: pin vise, pin drill. These are little bitty Dremel drills, and I use them for, I think I've demonstrated this before, I use them for making pin vise repairs where I drill holes, stick a piece of baling wire in there to fix a broken part, rifle barrels, handlebars on drag bikes, anything that's kind of long, and breaks off. Last but not least, not last, there's more. Razor blade, valuable for cutting elastic to the proper lengths. The main thing I use this for, though, is to shape the beards. I take a dulled blade, especially dull them up so don't cut the face accidentally, and just use it to go like this to straighten out the beards and the hairlines on the flocked head before the glue dries. Works very well. Use it for many other things as well, for cutting the flywheel covers off while fixing talkers. Too many uses to even remember them all. Toothbrushes, old toothbrushes for various cleaning. This one I use mainly for cleaning stuff off. Talker units mainly for scrubbing them down with alcohol. Works great. This one here I keep on the side for flocks. Again, after the glue is dried, you'll find there's a whole bunch of loose flock in there that after you trim it, and when you're doing the flocking, once the glue is all full of flock, then you get all kinds of loose ones stuck in there. Brush that shit out. Very handy to have for that. Use an old one. Don't use the one you use on your teeth. Okay. Probably last, I'm going to take a quick look around and see if there's anything else I'd forgotten. But this is just a cheap old shit. I've had this pocket knife for probably 30 years. Just a cheap old one I picked up at an auto parts store for a couple bucks. I dulled the blade up a bit, and I use it to scrape flock off the heads. Then again, I dulled it for the specific reason I wouldn't accidentally cut through the head. This works great for scraping the flock off. It's also good for scraping other things, like, you got the residue of the pad back here and you scrape it off with that. It's good for all kinds of little things like that. Let's see. Clamps. Got a lot of these. These are great for muscle body repairs, for holding pieces of glue that are glued together. Larger ones like this retractable clamp work great for clamping glued parts again together. I use this a lot in muscle body work. Okay, a couple other things. Little tweezers, scissors, tweezers. These are great for all kinds of little things. And a pair of hemostats, which is also good for clamping down on things. Those are the basic tools that I use, and as I said, I find them pretty invaluable. Any of the stuff I just showed you, if I lose it, I got to replace it because you got to have it. One more thing I'd like to show you that I got recently that I found very handy, that helps a lot for small work. This thing is basically just like a hobby vise. Anyways, it's got this magnifying glass, and you can clamp stuff down right in front of the glass. Put the glass whichever way you want. And it's got a nice heavy little base here, so it's not easy to tip over. And it moves in just about any direction you could think of. This is great for clamping small stuff in, so that you can, see close in to work on it. The older I get, the more I find that the eyeballs don't work quite as well. So I have to sometimes use these aids. But even if you don't have, any sort of eyeball issues, it comes in pretty handy. All right. Let's see. Did I cover everything I wanted to cover today? I don't know. Did I? Probably I did. But this is kind of random, so I was just throw things in there at random as well, right? Oh, here's one more thing. This has many uses in the workshop, but what I mainly use it for is something that probably wouldn't suspect. One sec. Whenever I do a flock like this, where it has different sizes of hair, where I've got to match it up pretty closely, or one like this, where you got to do different colors, so you only do one part at a time, and then you do the next part. Same with this, with different sizes. The glue that I use likes to crawl up into the flock. So when you're doing something like this, for example, when I go in here to make cover the rest of the head with a different color of flock than this, put a little Vaseline on here on the edge of the flock, and that way you can ram the glue right up there against the edge, so you get a good seam, and it prevents the glue from crawling up into the hair and creating a hard spot. It's also great for lubricating things in talkers. Like I use silicone spray mostly, but for the flywheel gear and the main drive gear, if they get a little dinged up, they need a little lube. Little teeny bit of Vaseline on there works great. Don't use white lube, that doesn't work very well. It dries out and gets crunchy and causes problems. But anyhow, this stuff has a lot of uses in the shop as well. And it's cheap too. Also, another thing I'd like to mention, this here is my test head. I call him Clyde. Clyde usually gets an application of flock for me, testing various types of flock, hair colors, blending, or if somebody asks me to do a custom hairstyle, I always test it out on Clyde here first. Reason being is because Clyde is a formative international head off its really cheapy figure. But anyhow, he's soft enough that I can test. He's hardening up a little bit. Never forget that part. I use Elmer's glue for testing flocks. It's water soluble, obviously, so it comes right off, and that way you can redo the flock with the epoxy to make it permanent if everything works out correctly. But it's a good way to test them. It's using a simple test head. Okay, well, that's pretty much about it. Little bit, well, wait, no, a little bit more. I'm probably going to be using the random rambles. I'm going to be doing these on a little more regular basis, probably twice a month, I think. And I'm also going to use them to keep you updated on what's going on, what you can expect in next videos and stuff. So that being said, this is the video talker I've been fixing in the talker repair series. You can expect within about 2 weeks, I'm going to do the last video in that series, showing other things that can go wrong aside from the basics. You can also expect in the very near future some more stuff from the one and only amazing 3D guy, Jim Egner. I've got a box coming from him, and I'll be doing a review on the products that are coming in that box. And let's see what else. Oh, and I also have a pretty good sized Cotswold order coming in, and I will show you what's in that box. It'll be in an opening, I guess. And I'll probably keep those kinds of things to the random ramble videos. So anyhow, as always, it's been fun. I love doing these. I hope you guys liked it. I hope you learned something. Like I said, if you agree or disagree with anything I said about some of the controversial stuff I said, hey, let me know in the comments. Blast me if you disagree, and praise me if you don't. Anyhow, you guys have a great weekend. Have a great week ahead of you. Everybody stay safe. Enjoy your week. Thanks very much for watching, and we'll see you next time in Mike's Laboratory. Good night, dudes.